Hi guys, thanks for tuning in today. Today we're going to work on this section of the wheel well, and there's also a mounting bracket here that mounts the body to the chassis. Last episode we fixed this corner here. We're actually going to come down into here and replace some of this here. This metal was really thin. I was chasing some welds in here, and as long as we have it with this donor piece, I'm going to go ahead and replace it. And this is the section we're going to use. Go in there. First thing we're going to do is clean up the back here, get rid of this undercoating, seam sealer, what's left of the luggage tray, and this section here. We'll get this all taken off so we can lay it up in there and get some good measurements before we start cutting. So that'll be on the agenda for today. Stick around. So I found the best way to get rid of this undercoating seam sealer is a needle scaler. So we got those parts removed that were on here. Drilled out some of them. Used the air chisel to get most of them. This kind of beats it up pretty good. But we're not going to use kind of up here anyway, so I didn't care if it dented this up a little. But you can hammer it back out too. It's the fastest way to get them off. It's so rusty you couldn't see where the spot welds were. Some of these spots I were able to see it. And I just use a spot weld drill, real short spot weld drill. That works really good. You can get through just one layer, and it basically just puts a little tiny hole, easily welded up. So we got this mostly clean. We'll sandblast around in here, and probably sandblast up in here too. You know, we're probably going to cut it in like this, so really none of this matters. Little rust pits in here, not too bad. It's not going through. So line it up on the car and start a game plan there. So I'm just going to take some welding rod here and get a template made from this corner to here. So this is really all we have to go by for position yet. There's really nothing back here. And we're going to cut this out, so we need a measurement. So we have a template to go by. Okay, so this is how this piece fits in here. I think we'll cut this piece out first so we can then scribe to the body. And basically, this is rusted here, so we're going to come in right here behind these 3 spot welds, which are right here. So we can come in an inch or so from those spot welds. So we'll come in here. We'll start with that. And that'll also get rid of our pitted rust here, most of it. So we'll cut this out first. So we'll go test fit this. So I have this fitting in here pretty good now. This measurement is really close. They cut it right at this corner. So we have a line that's close. It's going to have to go up just a hair, the thickness that it's sitting down. So if we cut to that line, we'll have to do some adjusting to get it up in there. And then we'll cut this down here. So it'll probably go like that. Okay, so I have it in with one cleco right now. It lines up pretty good on each end. You can get it in there. So what I'm going to do is put a little tack weld on each end. Probably put in a couple more clecos. And then I'm going to take the body and set it on the chassis. Probably a waste of time, but I want to make sure that this lines up and there's no issues after it's all completely welded in. So we'll tack it together, put a couple more clecos in, and then we're going to have to get this body onto the lift, the chassis under it, and see how this lines up. This is the most important point, is that this lines up. And there is leeway in there, you know, probably actually a 1/4 inch probably all the way around. So we got a little leeway, but we want to make sure it sits down on there nice and flat. So we're going to do that right now. Okay, so I have the body up on the lift. I have a couple of clecos holding this in, and it's tack welded on each end here. Pretty much what I think it's going to be. We're going to trim this a little bit, but it needs to go down onto here. This is where it matches up to. So I'm going to take a plasma cutter and cut away at that. Try to remove what's left of the old bracket and get enough heat into there. Hopefully the bolt will come out then. Okay, so we got the body down on the chassis, and we got this bolt lined up perfect. Comes right through there, and there's a little bit of a gap for the rubber bushing under there. So that's perfect, and it's lined up in here. Bolt holes on the heater channel here, and then also the body up here. The bolts are right on. So that's perfect. We'll etch a line here and weld it in there. Okay, so we have our scribed line, which is a little above our drawn Sharpie line, because we cut these back so the piece could fit up in there. So this is the actual line, the scribed line, and this is where it'll come down here. So we'll go ahead and cut that to size. So I made a little patch panel here to patch this area of the luggage compartment that attaches to that wheel well that we're putting in. So I'm going to weld this in now. Of course, just blows right through. So I have it all stitched in here pretty good. Okay gap through here. It's good for MIG welding. It would have been nice if I could have got it all like this down here, because then we could have TIG welded it. But for this project, this will be okay. A couple Cleco holes we got to weld up. So we'll go ahead and weld it up, kind of stitch it so it don't get too hot and warp anything. But this shouldn't warp. This is pretty thick metal and it's curved, so but we'll be careful with it. So we'll go ahead and weld it all up now. Okay, we're back from refilling the shielding gas. So I'm going to finish up these welds. I won't bore you with all this welding. There's a lot here when you're just going one tack at a time. We're moving around, and then I'll bring you back when I got this done and show you how I'll grind this. Okay, so here's what we have. Came out pretty good. It's not real pretty welds. This one here, this side here was a very big gap. Probably too much. You probably should have filled it with something, but I was able to go kind of slow, and the heat affected zone isn't too bad on it. You can tell it's a lot smaller where the gap was thinner. And it's all pretty flat. There's not a lot of spots that sunk in. Right here there's a little bit. Just a little bit here, but this is kind of the flat spot. All this curved area is fine. This didn't warp at all. And this didn't warp at all, being close to the edge and being concave. Now what we'll do is we'll attack it with the weld grinder. What I'll do is take just a cutoff wheel and just carefully just knock off all these tops of these welds. Try not to touch any of the outlying metal, and then we'll see how it looks. I'm sure there'll be some spots that'll need touch-ups. So go at it now with the grinder. I'll show you a little bit of how I do that. Okay, what I'm going to do here is use the just a cutoff wheel. A real skinny one. You could also use an angle grinder with a cutoff wheel. And we're just going to go at it and just hit these tops of these welds off. It's going to take a long time to do this, but this is the best way to do it because you don't want to thin this metal out on each side of the weld. So this is going to take just the tops off, and then we'll hit it with the maybe an 80 grit roll lock probably at the end. And then hold a light behind it, look for any holes, and we'll touch those up with the welder. It'll take a couple tries. You don't get it all in one the first try, unless you're really good. Just as soon as it starts hitting the metal, you stop. Let me get the light in here. So it's just taking the tops of the welds off, basically. I'm stopping as soon as it starts scratching that outside metal. So it's slow going, but you're not grinding away any of this metal, thinning out this sheet metal. Just the weld. And I don't know if you can see it, there's a little pinhole right there, so there'll be some touch-ups every few inches, couple inches. So I've been at it for about an hour, and I'm about half done. Got this section, just kind of some of the tops knocked off up there. And this section's done. So it does take a long time, but it's the best way if you don't want to thin the metal out and just get the tops of the weld flush with the metal. Now I'll show you the inside here. So here's the inside. Got real good penetration all the way through. I was thinking I'd have to weld this back side some, but it has full penetration through there, so there's no need to. And this, I'll just take one of those Walter discs, basically a 36 grit disc, and just knock the tops off here, because this gets carpeted. It gets full padding down, like a wool pad and a carpet, so that will not be seen. And this gets seam sealed. We do have to, we'll just weld this luggage tray back onto the wheel well and put some welds in here. And then this all gets seam sealed. Fix that crack there. It's definitely getting there. All this fixed, and now the wheel well. So keep chipping away at it. So I made a little patch piece here for this spot that was cut too short. So we'll go ahead and weld that in. Okay, so here's the final repair. A few pinholes in there that I had to touch up. Not too bad. Like I say, we're not going to get too crazy on dressing these welds. Not going to hide the fact that this car is welded on. Just getting it structurally sound. So we had the corner we did a couple weeks ago, and now this wheel well section is pretty much done, and then we'll be on to the bumper bracket next. So I'll show you the inside quick. So here's the inside. I just took the tops of the welds off on here. This gets covered with carpet. So it just needs to be smooth. And we do have to weld this luggage tray to the wheel well yet. It'll just be a few tack welds. So there you have it for this project. The wheel well and body mount. So thanks a lot for watching. Please subscribe, give me a like, and we'll see you on the next one when we tackle this.